Hello everyone, and welcome back to 4FS Gaming, and today we are going to take a look at Han Solo in Battlefront 2, a sharpshooter of the blaster heroes who has some of the highest damage potential in the game. His DL-44 pistol has excellent range, one-shot potential for all normal troopers except heavies at those excellent ranges, and can augment his close-range damage even further with his sharpshooter ability. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We're going to start in the normal order with his general stats like health and movement, move on to his primary weapon, and then finally talk about his abilities, star cards sprinkled throughout, and some tactics at the very end so you can shoot your way out of any fight. First of all, his health, survivability. He has a max health of 650, and there are no star cards that can improve this value. He can regen up to 200 health at a time, but if he loses any more than that, he'll have to either eliminate enemy troopers or heroes, or wait underlay a squad shield to get more back, although the latter is a very slow method of getting your health back. His health regen is 50 health per second after a 5-second delay. And, as an added bonus, his movement speed is slightly faster than normal units, and it is quite noticeable. He also has the standard 2 dodge rolls that provide a 20% damage reduction for the entire animation. Now, with a certain star card, this number can be up to 3 rolls, but it comes at a cost of course, a star card slot, and his abilities taking up to 3.5 seconds longer to cool down, or, at least worst, I guess is how you would put it, 2 seconds longer if the card is fully upgraded. So just keep this downside in mind when we talk about all of his abilities, that if you use the extra roll star card that's called Smuggler's Wits, your abilities will have slower cooldowns. Not a great trade-off in my opinion. Oh, and he also has 65 melee damage instead of 50, but you really shouldn't use it, again, since all of his other options are much better. And really the only time I can consider using it is if I have absolutely 0 other options. Transitioning along to the next segment, let's look at his primary weapon of choice, the DL-44 Blaster Pistol. This iconic weapon has some of the highest damage per shot and damage per second values in the game, if you can augment it with Sharpshooter, and it can hold damage surprisingly well at to longer ranges. A good starting point would be just the raw, on-paper damage stats of the pistol, and right away we can see that this blaster has a lot of power behind it. It deals 80 damage per shot to the body, which allows you to rather comfortably two-shot any normal trooper besides the heavy, who will require an additional third shot. But its rather pedestrian 175 rounds per minute limits how much damage you can output, and with the 1.9 headshot damage multiplier, this puts the headshot damage at a really, really high 152. This means at closer ranges, 20 meters and closer to be exact, you will be dealing 233.3 DPS to the body, which is pretty decent, but if you land consistent headshots, which is easy with the DL-44 since it has perfect accuracy and really high bolt speed, you deal a massive 443.3 headshot DPS. Now, this doesn't apply to most normal troopers, since you will one-shot kill them anyway, but against reinforcements and heroes, you will melt through them in no time. Now, unfortunately, of course, this damage will fall off past 20 meters, and this damage fall-off won't end until 50 meters away. At that point, you'll deal 55 damage per body shot, or 104 damage per headshot, but your slow rate of fire again hinders your DPS values. It's also not a very spammable weapon, as you'll only be able to fire 8 shots before needing to cool the weapon down. This can be up to 11 with a star card, but that's not much better. Alternatively, with another star card, the DL-44 will not overheat for 2.5 seconds after a headshot kill. So for those sharpshooters out there, this might be a better choice. No matter which route you choose to take, the pistol does have a fast manual cooling cycle, and it will also naturally cool down after a short break from firing and will fully cool itself almost instantly. Now that's the basic stats of his main weapon covered, let's move on to his abilities, starting with Sharpshooter, his center ability. This ability functions similarly to overload abilities found on Enforcers, in that it changes the way your primary weapon works. Yeah, we aren't completely done with the DL-44. Anyway, when the ability is activated, there's a slight delay before you can start shooting. When you do start shooting, the rate of fire will be ramped up to 350 RPM, double the normal pistol's rate of fire. But rate of fire is the only on-paper stat that's improved about the DL-44 when Sharpshooter is activated. Your max damage falls to 65, your minimum damage falls to 40, you no longer have 100% perfect accuracy, and your range drop-off starts earlier at 15 meters and also ends earlier at 35 meters. but that extra fire rate more than makes up for the downsides of the ability, as all of a sudden your DPS jumps up to 380, and your minimum DPS is 233.3, the same as your base maximum DPS. Now, the ability does not last for very long because, unlike other overload abilities, this one reduces its active time with each shot by about 2 seconds of active time. The ability can be active for 25 seconds if you don't shoot anything, and you can fire a max of 11 shots before the timer runs out and the ability goes on cooldown. In terms of star cards that can affect this ability, with one star card, the shot limit can be increased from 11 to 15 because the time reduced per shot is, well, reduced. And with a different star card, you can regain 40% of the duration back per kill, which is about 10 seconds of additional firing time. Okay, now that we've covered Sharpshooter, we can now move away from the DL44 for the time being. Next on our list of abilities is going to be the Shoulder Charge, and it's as simple as it gets. When you activate the ability, you'll charge forward at high speed and deal damage to and knock back the first enemy you hit. You also have pretty good control over the charge, being able to change direction easily. Not as easily as if you weren't charging, but still, the extra control is nice for turning corners. You'll deal 200 damage to all troopers, outright eliminating any normal units or aerials without the extra health star card, and you'll deal 150 damage to all enemy heroes. Even though the damage is lower, the utility of knocking them to the ground will give you and your team an advantage in taking them out of the fight. So long as they don't block it with a lightsaber, that is. The ability lasts for 3 seconds, but can be cancelled early by pressing the button again, or rolling, which is a much better choice to get away from danger as there's no delay. And the ability has a 10-second cooldown, which is pretty snappy and allows you to use it whenever you might need it. And again, on the topic of star cards, there are 2 star cards that change this ability. One gives you up to a 40% damage reduction while the charge animation is active. This gives you the option of using the shoulder charge to get out of danger and take almost half the normal damage you would. It also lets you take less damage when closing in to hit an enemy. The other card cuts the recharge time in half for every enemy you defeat, which is nice if you want to chain them together. If you're into that sort of thing, I guess. Alright, and now it is time for his last ability, the Detonite Charge. A supremely destructive, manually detonated explosive that can clear entire points if used to its strengths. A significant step up from the Heavy's version, Han will throw the charge like a grenade, and you can throw it pretty far for something that does this much damage. You can detonate it at any point after you've thrown it or after it lands. It deals 200 damage up to 5 meters away from the explosion, and will drop to a minimum of 5 damage at 10 meters away. If an enemy is caught anywhere in the blast radius, they will be knocked down. The closer they are to the center of the blast, the farther they'll get launched. And that's actually pretty much it for the stats of the ability, but it does have 2 star cards that can change how the ability functions, and actually significantly changes the way that you use them. One of them ups the max damage to 240 if the charge is detonated in the air, but this does not change the blast radius. To do that, you need to use the other star card, which increases the maxed blast radius to 12.5 meters up from 10, and the inner blast radius to 6.25 meters up from 5. But only after the charge has been sitting still on a surface for 5 seconds. And since the charge won't cool down until it's detonated, and, well, it can be countered by an officer's diffuser or other explosives which will completely eliminate the device without it exploding, I wouldn't really recommend using this card. Airburst is a much more useful and aggressive option, especially when dealing with enemy villains. Now that all of his abilities have been covered, let's move to some general play tactics and how you should position yourself when playing Han Solo. Well, he really excels in close to mid-range engagements, where he maintains his max headshot damage. At that range, he's also able to get his Detonite Charge where it needs to go, use his Shoulder Charge to get out of danger or to get rid of an enemy or two that gets too close, and close the range a little to unleash the full power of his Sharpshooter's abilities, DPS. He can also work at longer ranges, but then you really have to get headshots to be competitive with snipers or other long-range options. But at least on the light side, you're probably the most consistent long-range hero, with only Leia having more damage potential with her alt fire. But Han is definitely one of my favorite heroes in Battlefront 2, and that's simply due to the fact that his kit itself is very simple. but also has a lot of utility with the detonite charge for point clearing. His gimmick is dealing massive, precise damage at mid-range, but performs really well in any situation he finds himself in. The only thing you should really avoid is getting into a one-on-one fight with a lightsaber user. You don't have many options when fighting them, and will run out of them almost immediately. But if you catch them unaware or fighting them as a group, you will deal with them rather quickly, because your damage is so high and your abilities disrupt enemies so much. I mean, both the detonite charge and the shoulder tackle will knock enemies to the ground, leaving them completely defenseless against either you or your allies. And that, my friends, is our analysis of Han Solo in Battlefront 2. He really is a fun hero. While he is simple and easy to use, he's devastating to enemy teams who don't deal with him quickly. Now about our next video, I know it will be about an infiltrator, since this channel actually hasn't done any videos covering any of those units yet. Which particular infiltrator I'm not sure of yet. I have footage ready for all of them, it just comes down to getting the testing done and writing the script and putting the video together. But that video will be coming out soon, so subscribe if you're up to it to catch that video once it drops. This is Doc from 4FS Gaming, and we will see you all in the next video.